Well, hello, Connected Empowerment. This is Tony Hightower again. I am here with one special person. This lady is Laura Iverson, and she is a very good friend from Arkansas. Went to church with her for some time, and was lucky enough to facilitate a self-defense retreat with her, where she did an awesome arm trap and roll and just about dislocated my shoulder and everything else. She is just an amazing woman with a very, very powerful experience and story. And so I just wanted to kick it to her. And Laura, just tell us who you are, and what's your message, what's your experience. The floor is yours, ma'am, and I'll yield to you. And please share everything that you want. And if you do not want to share something, you do not have to. So, ma'am, take it away.
Thank you so much. I still have the boards that I broke in half in my office. In case people need reminders, it's like, don't let this sweet face fool you.
That's right. You are a badass. Yes, ma'am.
I learned some things. Like, I've learned some things, okay? So
I love it.
So yeah, I really have been, I think, the most prayerful in these past few months that I've been in a number of years. Not just for myself, but for the nation, for my loved ones, people that I know, people I don't know. It's so many different things that have impacted our lives radically and disproportionately. And with the most recent cases, well, it's not new, but it's recent cases of social unrest in America. It's been hard for me personally to be a Black woman in this space. Very hard. I am a business educator. I'm a business strategist. I have my own business. So I did not, before the pandemic happened, I kind of saw myself as an elective something. Like, if you have money in your budget, that's typically the conversation. It's like how people hire me. Not, oh, please help us with our business because there's a pandemic and we don't know what to do. As if I learned about this in school.
Instead of being like at the top of your game. Yes.
Right. So I've had to be at the top of my game since March, because if I don't have a student that is now panicking because their future is way uncertain and they're not going to be the entrepreneur, badass that they thought they were going to be, I have a business owner that's like, I need to know that I'm going to be okay. And I need reassurance. I need something tangible. And it's like, I want so bad to give you all those certainties. I cannot. So to have to be on top of my game and be present and be cognizant of how serious these concerns are to so many people I serve has been tough. And then add this recent level of prejudice and racial angst. Because I call it that, because nothing that has occurred as in relates to that. Like the pandemic, that's kind of a different thing for me. But the racial aspect of it is nothing new. But to some people, they very much treat it like it was a new thing. Like, oh my God, racism is a thing?
Yeah. Because it didn't affect their life until now, or they didn't see it, or they didn't want to see it. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it's like, where did that come from? And so on the business aspect of things, it was for people, especially my white colleagues, a natural ask. What do we do about racism in business? And I'm like, my God, if anybody even asks me, do I want to supersize it at this point, I'm just going to cry. Like, it's like, thank you, God, for allowing me to be in this position at this time in such a historical and pivotal moment in our American history. But it's like, my God, I need to cope for a second. I need to have some mental health days. I need to process myself, and that's the space that I really, where I feel like my story regarding this kind of really begins, because for me, while I'm trying to be respectful, I'm also having to show love to myself, knowing that it's okay right now for you to grieve. It's okay. Somebody lost their life.
Yes.
It's okay for you to recognize that and to recognize that humanity, and for you to be upset about it. It is okay. And you do not have to explain that to anybody. Why you are not picking up your phone, why you are not answering their business questions. That is okay. And so I did not for a few days. And I got to where I felt like I could do some work. And me and a colleague of mine, we're collaborating on different things in our businesses. And I just called her one morning, and I think the first 5 minutes of the conversation, we were just like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And we just let everybody go home, virtually, of course. But like, everybody go home. It's like, you know what? Work is just not going to happen today. We can't. We're incapacitated. We are in crisis. We are in mourning, and all of the contractors and staff we work with are all Black women. Mm. So the day after, the next morning, I was having this conversation in an online space for like business strategists of like, how are y'all coping? I kind of feel like what I'm doing right now is the wrong answer. And everybody's just like, no, like, I wish that I was able to do that. And I started thinking all the different things as they were telling me why taking your mental health seriously during this time, or why some of these things were not common practice, really came down to some things that we have to unlearn about doing business that were constructed through white supremacy. And our productivity culture is, especially for Black, in like the Black culture, is very toxic. There are a lot of studies that have been done on how our grief and our suffering matters less in every industry. So there's why our mortality rate looks different as it relates to new mothers giving birth. That's why there's a lot of uneasiness about going to the doctor in the Black community, because we were experimented on. There's a lot of words that we say that we don't really think that is tied to racism, because it's just normal now. Everybody says it. It's like, oh, we'll just, you're strong. You can get through this. That dismissive behavior. And so for me to be in that moment and say, I'm not strong right now. I am not. This is impacting me. And I'm recognizing on a business level that the system that's being protested is business. I have a business, and people hate me right now, and I'm mourning. This is a lot to deal with in real time, mind you. And there's a pandemic, and our numbers are going up. So everything's just intensified.
Yes.
and so I just had to call on some good friends and just say, I just need to talk and just talk this out, because I'm panicking. And I feel like I'm, from people coming to me, like I'm supposed to have the right answer. Yes. And I don't have the right answer, I don't think. And so so I create this post after this conversation about, like, can I just find other people who want to be anti-racist, who are, people who uphold anti-racist practices, and can we just connect? Because I feel like I don't have the right answer, but maybe collectively we can come up with parts of the right answer, but I don't think I'm just the one that has it. So everybody started commenting on this one post. And so much so that it turned into, we need to make a group and then have a clear focus or whatever. I did my research and due diligence, and I was able to financially supported my businesses, rather able to financially support the activities of the group for as long as, you know, I can. But yeah, that's where I definitely found some incredible people that I can break bread with, they don't necessarily look like me or are in the same industry, but we're having these conversations, this dialogue that is so intense and so raw, but it's calling into question all the things that we do on a regular basis that we don't recognize it is not celebratory of someone else that is not our same ethnic group, have same lifestyle. Maybe they identify a different gender or what have you. So even if they don't share the same pronoun, how are we creating a safe space for them where they feel seen and heard? Because if we based our businesses just solely around policing, we are truly upholding our role in white supremacy, because legislatively they write what white supremacy looks like in America all day, every day. They are the authors of it. But those laws, those things won't mean anything without businesses for it to filter through. How can you really be, how can the white only bathroom really mean anything significant unless that white only bathroom was in a business?
True. Good point. That's a great point.
If it's in your house, I mean, you could say it could be white, black, polka dot. Nobody cares in your house.
That's right, your house. Right.
Right.
Makes sense.
It's in your house. But if I put in front of my door that we only have white only water fountains, that's different. Or I only accept loan applications from white applicants.
Yep.
Businesses have to do that. So we have to be the conduit for white supremacy to even have legs. So when we look at some of the things, and there's been a lot of discussion legislatively, I think at all levels and all states to some degree, about police reform. This isn't a new topic, but it's gotten faster traction. I'll put it that way, faster traction in my lifetime than what it's had in any other time in U.S. history. And when people are like, okay, once we fix that, we're done. It's like, no. That's the tip of the iceberg. The reason why that's important is because the police were not a thing until post emancipation.
Exactly.
They were never a thing.
Can you explain how the law was rewrote and why that was such a big problem after emancipation?
Yes. So Emancipation Proclamation, technically it has a checkered history. So the part that people recognize is like, oh, the enslaved are now free, but that's not really what happened. So during this, the Civil War and the North versus South, so to speak, all of it had to do with property. Let's just do it really simple. All of it had to do with property. The North wanted what they wanted regarding property as far as land, human resources, you can call them slaves, whatever, human resources and technology, and what that looked like at the time. The South were like, we have it all and we deserve it all, and F you. Okay?
One way to put it. Thank you.
Yeah. So how to best increase your numbers than to free the enslaved. It wasn't about the enslaved being whole, which is why Juneteenth is so important, is because a year later, the enslaved in Texas heard the news of the emancipation. There was monies in the form of restitution paid to, get this, the slave owners or the estates that never went to the enslaved. So if any type of reparations occurred, that's what that looked like. And so now that, okay, the North won, now we're, this union or whatever. You have all these people hanging in the balance that have to make a decision. Some chose to stay where, where they were, though they were no longer technically legally enslaved. Then others wanted to go and settle in new spaces. So there was a great migration that took place. Now, this is where stuff got tricky, because now we have options, whereas before we didn't. Now we need police. This is why we need police.
Yeah.
It's because it's easier if it's like your slave. It could be hundreds of them, but it's your property. It's on your plantation. But now imagine you being like a household of 5 over 100, managing it. They have no options, no choices. They can choose to leave. But if we have because of the fear of rioting in the form of like, I'm going to revolt, a political revolt, they needed police to function in the same capacity that the overseer served or the slave owner served. So that's why there are very close connections between the KKK and police forces. So yeah, so like, I mean, very, very close ties. Like those were the first police, and a lot of them are still around and about. That's where you see a lot of close ties to legislators, I'm sorry, legislators and political figures from that time on forward. That's where all of that came through, is because they needed to take what they had written that was applicable to their plantation and make it large scale. That's the only way the South could feel like this whole union thing was going to be equitable. And because it was all about property in the first place, the North was not gonna really try hard to stop it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we got what we wanted.
Yeah, the rest is your problem. Yeah.
Right. That's your problem. You figure it out. And if you need to be in an elected office, we can help you with that. Like, there's no big deal about that. So that's why, there's a lot of inconsistency as it relates to how beneficial was it initially to allow Black men to vote. Because, again, that was a political ploy to increase and leverage the vote going one way. We still see traces of that to this very day. That hasn't changed. And then you go through the suffrage movement that is supposed to increase the level of liberties that we have, but then they add on, because white supremacy authors what white supremacy looks like, and the legislative level, they create the poll tax. Then you have these voter ID laws. Then you just add all these other things on top of it. So even though we have the Civil Rights Act, even though we have the Emancipation Proclamation, all of it has been political, and none of it has been about our wholeness and about our equity. And so when people look at protests, or they look at, and they look at certain things, they mix up the message. War is a language of white supremacy in the regard, and as far as how the United States has utilized it. It has not been a tool to obtain equality for the mass. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it has been, I need to obtain more leverage or more power.
Right.
Because that's how I'm going to not be outdone. So if you're seeking war, and it could be even be a war on words, and you kind of probably see it's on Facebook when people say stuff, and then they're just like, I'm not racist. And then, they just start typing. It's like,
yeah.
You're seeking to not be erased. That's the primary motivator of why a lot of these white supremacy, these racist laws exist, to not be erased. But for people of color, our message has been very consistent, and I really don't want people to muddy it up with the agitators, people who infiltrate these protests, disguising, wearing blackface. That our message has always been freedom and emancipation. We knew who we were.
Yes.
We knew our identity. It was taken from us. Every opportunity for us to assemble, that's why we couldn't get married. That's why anytime that you had more than 2 or 3 of us together, it was a crime. And I went to the Whitney Plantation in outside of New Orleans, and they were saying, I asked, I was like, why is that always, and you see in countries where there's like an oppressor, or it's like, you know, totalitarian, why is assembly the first liberty they take away? Is that assembly gives you hope.
Yes. Absolutely. Strength in numbers.
There are strength in numbers. If you cannot connect, you have no hope. You have no strength. We see it all the time in the Bible where it talks about where 2 or more are gathered.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
right.
if I can keep you from that, you cannot keep your heritage. You cannot keep your dialect. You cannot keep your language. You can't keep your spiritual practices. And so much of our existence has been robbed that the only thing that we have left that technically and theoretically is ours is our time. Because our life here in America isn't even our own. We've seen that in recent examples. And so we just want emancipation. We could care less about war. We're not trying to get revenge. We're not trying to do this.
Right.
We just want to be free in a country that constantly tells us, you're not worth freedom.
That's very wow. And I wanted to follow up with you on one thing that you said earlier about the doctor. And so for those that don't know, and I think again, ignorance, there's a lot of that going around. So Dr. Marion Sims was a gynecologist who used, and he's one of many, I'm sure, he used to do surgeries on Black women without anesthesia so that he could then take his practice with anesthesia and do it on white women. He was a gynecologist,
Yes.
I believe. He's one of many. But so and those type of pictures still hang in government buildings, which is
Yes.
just blew my mind, because not knowing what that picture meant and never, walking by it, or, a lot of people probably walk by it and go, well, what does that mean? And then not give it a second thought to us. But then to you guys, I can't imagine what that brings up in your hearts. And then to go to a doctor and say, why should I trust you? I mean, I think again, ignorance, and I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Laura. You know what
No,
you
it's
know.
fine. It's fine. No, I mean, you're right. That's one of many examples, and it's something that it's so hard. It's like when people say, "Oh, slavery was like forever ago," but the imagery, the laws and restrictions, the policing are still here. So it's like your rapist existing, and you knowing that at any point in time, if they want to rape you again, they could. They always have access to you.
That's
You could try to have a normal life, get a job, do all the things that the textbook stuff about, moving on from your trauma, right? But your rapist lives in your town. They're on your block. They on purpose drive by your house so that you know that anytime they wanted to have you, they could. So that's what this imagery looks like, and why taking down these monuments is so important to so many people, because we're tired. Why would it be okay to be re-traumatized? And I had this conversation with a social media influencer this morning about, she wanted people to come on, and she's like, why is it so hard? Like, people are just not wanting to come on and for us to talk about what's going on. And I don't understand. And I said, there are like 10 different things you have to do if somebody is raped before you can even get their testimony.
Yep, absolutely.
Being Black in America, we're constantly living in crisis. But the first thing you ask me isn't, am I okay? That's privilege. It's not, hey, what can I offer you? It could be, time, talent, or treasure. Pick one. Everyone has something that they can offer up to show that I see and I recognize your humanity, and I'm not coming to take from you. But when you leverage it with, I have a platform, shouldn't that be enough? I'm not the one that need to be educated in Black history. You ask me. How is that helping me that you got a platform that you asked me? And when I put it like that, she was like, oh yeah, that was kind of bad, huh? Yes, that was very bad. So that's why people are telling you no.
Wow. Yes.
Like you didn't even act like say, hey, how are you doing? I see it's Thursday, the sky's great, nothing. And for me personally, and this isn't every Black woman or every Black person, me personally, I'm a business educator. So people pay me for educating them about business. So for me, it's a conflict of interest depending on the platform for me to divulge business education in like a conference type level or whatever, because I could be doing this in 30 minutes and make $1,000.
Yeah.
Like it's,
Wow.
so for me, yeah, I'm not saying be rich and you have to always pay me, but in context, like think, use your brain. I get paid to give businesses business strategy. So you coming to me and saying, I recognize my business is racist, please help me, without prefacing it with what are your fees, is privilege.
That's true.
You felt inclined and entitled to what it took me years, and I know I owe like probably tens of thousands in student loans for what I know.
And more just today as we're sitting here. It actually went up about $1,000, I think. Yeah.
Right. I still probably, I still owe more. And so like that's privilege. You felt entitled enough to come to me like that when everybody else in the world doesn't get that privilege. They don't come to me with business questions and expect a free answer. They're like, "Hey, could you shoot me your email address or your website or whatever?" That's what happens outside of George Floyd and everyday life for me. So that's just not okay. And so when I explained it that way, she did apologize. And it's, she was like, I'm so sorry. That was so wrong of me. I totally get it now. But, we have to be mindful in that climate. Like yes, dialogue's important, but we're not a monolith. Black people don't owe white America anything at this point, as far as I'm concerned. Humanity aside, we have more than paid our dues to white America. And then to add to it, we've given you all the talent, all the culture. We've contributed to your language, your dialect, what is considered trending. We have given you books, dances, film. We have contributed to your technology, science. So as far as I'm concerned, if you cannot go and get a book at this point and leave me alone enough to grieve, that's privilege.
That's a great point, Laura. I think that's what's missed is not the reach out and say, Laura, how are you? I'm here for you. I love you, sister. What can I do? You also gave us The Rock, by the way, which I'm very thankful for because I love him. You know how much I love The Rock.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys did. You're very much in the forefront of everything we do. And so why not take it upon ourselves? And I had this talk with a coworker to go buy those books on Kathy Williams, who's a Buffalo Soldier, on Malcolm X to find out why was his last name X. Because that's important to know. More than just Martin Luther King, we should know the rest of it because it should be our history, and that is on us
Yes.
to step up and go, well, I need to learn more. And so I think, for a lot of us, we want to go, I'm not sure how to do it, or I'm not sure how to help. And so having these conversations is critical, but I think you're right. It's like on us to go do the research and find out, why is that painting such a trigger? Why are these statues so bad? And we take the onus to step up for you. So that, Laura, that's a great point. And I appreciate you sharing your story. I know we're getting close on time, but if you could close with anything, how do we then move forward as one people? Like, what can we do all together right now to move forward in racism? Because obviously we just have we just the tip of the iceberg is all we've gone.
Yeah.
There's so much more. So where do we go from here?
Um, I say this all the time. Go from here in love and not infatuation. Love is not about what's good or comfortable. Love is a wrecking ball. It's a disruptor. It sheds light in the dark. It casts out fear. It rattles cages. So if you are not the type of person that is willing to do the uncomfortable and the hard and to let go of privilege and to sacrifice, then we cannot make it together. We can't. And it takes all of us being willing to love just that radically, that my wholeness is not more important than yours. So yielding to that for me is always going to be the answer. But it's the hardest answer, but it's still the answer.
That's a great answer. I heard one time, I think my wife's daughter-in-law said it, the right thing and the hard thing are usually the same thing. And so that's,
Mm-hmm.
to love is not, it's messy and it's dirty and it's like you said, you're growing when things get uncomfortable and your truth is so small, you have to put that away to get a bigger truth. And just because you thought it yesterday or your parents told you this, your grandparents, it doesn't mean it's right. So you have to learn for yourself, and so that's critical. Laura, thank you for your time, and I'm sure we may do another one of these if you're up for it. But those of you that are watching in Connected Empowerment, thank you for taking the time. Laura is such an inspiration to me. She always has been, from getting over fears and doing self-defense with her personal stories to driving business and being at the forefront of that. Personally and professionally, she's always at the forefront. So be like Laura, right? Go out, get a book, and learn. Just learn. Don't wait and ask somebody. You want to, you learn history on your own, then Black history is American history. Go out and learn about it and find out why. And instead of going, well, you tell me, go out and figure it out yourself. It'll be so much more rewarding. So Laura, thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for taking the moment to share your incredible story.